Welcome to another episode of Help Me Believe, the show about Christian apologetics and theology. My name is Haden Clark, your host, and I'm excited to introduce my special guest to you. But before doing so, I want to shout out to all of our YouTube subscribers. We are celebrating passing the mile mark of 1,000 subscribers, and so a little bit of celebration. It's really just to celebrate not me, but all of our subscribers and all the shares and likes and subscribing that you've done over the past year or two. And so I just want to say thank you to all of our subscribers, as well as thank you to all of our patron supporters. Because of your support, I get to produce free material like this and put it out there on YouTube and whatnot. So thank you to our patron supporters. You too can become a patron supporter by following the Patreon link in the description below. Now, for today's episode, I want to introduce my special guest to you. His name is Cameron Bertuzzi. You probably know him from Capturing Christianity. Cameron, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. It's good to be here.
Hey,
Thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to have you on for a number of reasons. One of them, real quick, will be whenever I first started doing this, I was kind of deciding, how do I want to go about this? What do I want my channel to be about? That sort of stuff. And the main influence is really I've been a fan of the Justin Brierley's Unbelievable podcast for a long time, and just kind of how he interviews people and just kind of talks to them and things like that. And of course, he hosts debates and things like that on there as well. And so I was really looking at a model like that, and then you came along on the Unbelievable podcast, I believe, with Cosmic Skeptic, I think it was, and I said, I want to check this guy's stuff out. So I went and looked, and you had kind of a similar model, and I was like, oh, but this guy's like 2 steps ahead of me, and he's doing it a lot better. So, but so I really like what you got going on over at Capturing Christianity, and it's been an influence of mine as well. So I'm excited to have you on for that reason. But as well as I've learned a lot from your material as well. So again, thanks so much for joining me. And for those who may or may not be familiar with who you are, I thought it might be helpful if you give a introduction of who you are and what you do.
Yep. Well, I appreciate you sharing those comments about the influence that the ministry has had on you. And I don't want to sound too cliche with this, but I do just sort of give it all to God, like all the glory, so to speak, is God's. But yeah, so, and we'll get into this in a little bit. So I never planned on doing anything like this. I kind of like fell into it. And I think most of my jobs that I've held, even as a photographer, I sort of fell into that. And then I kind of fell into apologetics. So yeah, it's amazing what God has done. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, it's great to be here, and congratulations on 1,000 subscribers. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that your channel is growing. I'm always looking for new apologists and new Christians, new Christian thinkers to promote. And when I came across your stuff, I noticed that, just to kind of pay something back to you here, sure. I noticed, first of all, that like your branding seemed like you kind of knew what you were doing. The thumbnails are all very consistent. You've got kind of a consistent color scheme and your fonts and everything. And so that's the kind of stuff that I pick up on. And I noticed that initially, but that's sort of just the face of it. But ultimately it's about the content and how you interview and how you handle yourself and the discussions that you're doing and the topics that you want to focus on. And I noticed that, your stuff is just really good. So I'm really happy to help you out and promote you. And this is awesome. I'm really, I like the stuff you're doing. Well, so a little about me.
Yeah.
So my name is Cameron Bertuzzi. I guess I still am, a photographer. And as I mentioned, I kind of fell into photography, but eventually I started a ministry called Capturing Christianity. And perhaps I should explain why that happened, why the move from photography to apologetics.
Yeah, definitely.
So about a little under a decade ago, I learned that my brother became an atheist. He sort of came out to my brother-in-law, and then my brother-in-law told me, and then I had a conversation with my brother, and the conversation did not go well at all. And after that, I set to basically go out and learn what are the reasons, what's the evidence for Christianity? How can I respond to some of the things that he said? But also on this journey, I wanted to discover what the truth was. Like if it was going to lead down some other path away from Christianity, I wanted to know that. I wanted to know what are the good, are there any reasons at all? Not just give me the reasons. I wanted to know if these reasons are good. So I started this journey and I found William Lane Craig. I found some other Christian apologists. And as I started to read the literature, I learned that, hey, there's actually a lot of evidence and a lot of arguments for Christianity that are pretty strong, and it kind of surprised me to learn that there are all of these arguments and evidence. And so I didn't apostatize. I didn't fall away from Christianity because I found this evidence, and I wanted to share that. I wanted to share my experience with other people, and basically say, hey, look, I grew up a Christian, and I was actually part of a charismatic church. And so it was very touchy-feely, it was very emotion-based. And there would be like, healing services and whatnot, but how do you really test whether or not someone was healed from something like that? And so it was very emotion-based. And off of that, I wanted to say, hey, look, other Christians who were like me, there's all of this great material. If you're doubting Christianity, or if you're not sure if there's any good arguments or evidence for the truth of Christianity, look, there's all of this material that you need to read before you make any kind of decision. And so that's kind of what I want to do with my ministry now, is provide these resources, invite on professional philosophers and just smart people on not just on the side of Christianity, on the side of atheism. And we're even going to start doing some more stuff in Muslim apologetics too eventually. So that's kind of the story behind the ministry, how it started. Some of the reasons how it got started. There's obviously a whole lot more detail that we can go into, but yeah.
Yeah, so I want to say thank you for the comments that you made before going into that about myself and the ministry over here. It means a lot coming from you, so I really appreciate it. And secondly, I want to say that I'm not going to give you crap about your hat. I like the backwards hat, so that's cool. It's a lot better than the quarantine hair. I'll say that much. But,
oh my goodness.
No, I think that's so funny. Kind of the relationship that you have with William Lane Craig and how he was giving you crap about your hat. That's funny. But yeah, I think that we all kind of. When I say we, I think, I don't know how old you are, but I'm about 27. I'm about 27.
33.
Like I don't know how old I am, but I'm 27. And I think that our generation really, if we come to apologetics at all, it's through a similar way that you just described, which is kind of similar to my story, which is the way you described it, just kind of falling into it. I've been kind of saying apologetics by necessity because I was in seminary. And this is actually a pretty common theme among people who go to seminary, or just anybody that kind of dives into the intellectual life of Christian faith, is that you're going to have some doubts at some point. So like I was just knee deep in like systematic theology and church history and just all this stuff that I never thought about before. And then it just occurred to me, you know what? I don't even know like how that I know that God even exists in the first place, or that you certainly don't know that Jesus rose from the dead and that the Bible is God's word and stuff like that. And so that's kind of how I fell into it. And but yeah, so I think that's a pretty common experience that you described if people come across apologetics at all. And yeah, go ahead if you had something to say. Go.
Well, I was just reflecting on like how people normally fall into apologetics, and then how can we get apologetics to like the wider culture. Mm-hmm. I think personally, the way that we're going to do that is through pastors who care about apologetics. And the thing is, like, because where I live in the deep South in Texas, and it's very difficult to find someone just in everyday life who is skeptical or an agnostic or an atheist. Most people are Christians, and so there's not really a culture here of doubt. And so it's difficult to, like, people in my neck of the woods, it's difficult to convince them, hey, look, you need to care about this. You need to care about apologetics. You need to care about these arguments and evidence that people bring against the faith. It's difficult to convince people of that. And so I've always been thinking, like, how can we get people who are not really interested in it to kind of see the value of apologetics? So I think one way is to have pastors who care about it and who can introduce little things here and there, so that when someone in their congregation starts to doubt, they can remember that there's something that the pastor said that's relevant here, and then use that as like a springboard to get into it deeper. And there was something else that I was going to say, but anyways, feel free to share any of your thoughts on that.
I think you're exactly right. I think the local church and pastors specifically is going to be the best route to getting Christians to see the value in apologetics, and also, just seeing the value in it. And I think that pastors should be, because I know that pastors care about this, which is it's going to be what James calls faith without works, what Dietrich Bonhoeffer called I can't remember what he called it, but basically just the nominal Christianity. There's a lot of, and I don't mean this disrespectfully or anything like that. It's just an obvious observation that there's a lot of people who call themselves Christians, and they might go on Christmas and Easter, and that's about it as far as church goes. And you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, and so I think I know that a lot of pastors really care about that subject, even if they don't necessarily care about the intellectual, philosophical arguments for the existence of God and things like that. They definitely care about Christians who are basically exemplifying faith without works or nominal Christianity.
Yeah.
And I have found personally,
I can agree with that.
Yeah, and I have found personally that Christian apologetics has stirred my spiritual life, or has stirred me in the spiritual disciplines. So, for example, I think prayer is is something that a lot of Christians either struggle with or don't do a lot of, and that's definitely been the case for me. But like, when you know, because you have, say, solid arguments for the existence of God or something like that, that there is a God that is on the other end of the prayer, like it just, I don't know what it does. It increases the odds that I'm actually going to pray, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Or if you know that Jesus rose from the dead, not only via personal experience and things like that, but also because you study the historicity of it and things like that, I think you're much more likely to want to share that information or to evangelize the lost. And so I think that Christian apologetics really stirs spiritual life and spiritual disciplines. And so I think that's kind of a way to get pastors interested in it, or why pastors should be interested in it, and then kind of getting into the local church.
Yeah, I like that. I'm on board with that.
So moving on a little bit here, what has been, this is a question I wanted to ask you. You've had on so many awesome people, including atheists like Graham Oppy, who's somebody I really like. What's been your favorite interview or debate that you've had on your channel?
So I was thinking about this for a while, and I'm trying, because it's been a while since I've watched some of the debates and stuff that I've hosted. So, but there's two that really stick out in my mind, and it believe it or not, it's not any of the ones with Graham Oppy or with William Lane Craig, and he's been on a couple times. So I'm the two that stick out in my mind. So there's one that was between Luke Barnes and Alex Malpass on the fine-tuning argument. And that one sticks out in my mind because Alex is just such a clear, he's an atheist, but he's such a clear thinker. Mm-hmm. And that is something that I really esteem. Like when somebody, even if they disagree, but they can just articulate their ideas and help along a conversation because they think so clearly. The conversation between them two it was such a pleasure to listen to and be a part of. So that's one that really sticks out in my mind. And also because I like the fine-tuning argument a lot. So it was just fun to hear them go back and forth on it. And I'll say something nice about Luke Barnes too. He's a cosmologist out in, I think it's Sydney, but Australia for sure. And he's just incredibly brilliant. He's just probably one of the smartest people that I know personally. Yeah. So it was just an awesome conversation to see them go back and forth. And then the next one is a conversation between Matt Flanagan and Jason Thibodeau, which is probably one of the lesser watched debates that I've hosted. It was on the Euthyphro dilemma to the moral argument. And that one was a very narrow topic. This dilemma is something that pops up in conversations about morality and God and how God grounds morality or if he does it all. And so it was a really amazing discussion between them two to go so deep into a topic like that. That one was actually one of the most difficult for me to follow along as it was going. And so when I encounter a situation like that, I just try to look, other people that are watching this, maybe if they're, maybe it's confusing to me, but for some people who really need this material, I'm going to just kind of let them go and have their conversation, and then maybe jump in a little bit later because I want the benefit of the conversation to be what people are getting out of it instead of just like me jumping in to try to get clarification. Now, I know on the other side of things, it's important to kind of jump in and help the audience understand. But so it's a difficult line to walk. Yeah. But those are the two discussions or debates that I've hosted that really, really stick out in my mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just along the lines of what you were just saying there, I think you're an excellent host. I think you do a good job of writing that line like you were talking about. But real quickly, I want to say to the audience, we will have a portion of Q&A at the end. Sorry, I'm learning how to go live. This is only like my third live one to do. But anyway, we will have Q&A at the end. Man. I always forget to say this at the beginning. We'll have a session of Q&A at the end. Of course, you're welcome to talk amongst yourselves in the live live chat there, like everyone always does. But if you want me to address a question or Cameron to address a question, you can tag at Help Me Believe in the comment section, and I'll try to get to those. I think that we have super chats now. I don't really know how that works, but if you do that thing, I guess I'll be like everybody else and be sure to address those first, because I feel obligated to, because you spent money on it. And I'm kind of greedy. No, I'm just kidding. We did just recently get approved for monetization or whatever. I'm kind of new to all of it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I've made $1.65. I don't want to brag, but I think I'm going full time now.
Yes.
But anyway, so yeah.
You obviously, you got into this because of the money, right? So, I mean.
That's exactly why I got into it, was for the money. And it's really paid off for me. So I've been able to pay off all my debt with everything and stuff. So yeah, that's a total joke. But I'm not very funny. But yeah, Luke Barnes is somebody that I have had on, and yeah, he is definitely very brilliant.
Awesome.
And I don't know much about cosmology or just science in general. I never pretend to know anything about that. But yeah, he is definitely fun to talk to, and he's really nice, and he's super intelligent, like you said. I hadn't heard of the other debate like you kind of predicted there, but
yeah, I think it's for my views right nowadays, it's at about, I think it's like 2,000 to 3,000, which is, I mean, for some YouTube channels, that's a lot. But in terms of like the discussions that I've hosted, I think it's on the lower end as it stands right now, because a lot of people are starting to go back and kind of watch some of the older discussions that I've hosted. But so it's unfortunate that it's at such a low view count right now, and I don't know that anything is really going to change that. But it's one of my favorites.
It might,
so
if you go share
it
on Facebook go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. But do you mind if I think my daughter is trying to come in here and get some help with her Kindle? So do you mind? She's like ringing this little bell out here. Do you mind if I?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I'll tell that joke. I know. Okay. Go ahead.
Do it. Tell your joke. Cammy, come here.
Don't know any jokes. See.
You don't have any?
No, I'll look in the Q&A. What's good, Haden? What's going on, Nick?
Here you go. Okay, there you go. Yeah, my wife is she's been called back to work this week, so I've got all the kids with me at home. So enjoy your Kindle time. All right.
No, you're perfectly fine.
Good to go.
Okay, so Super Chat does work, and it's from Digital Hammurabi. Thanks, Digital Hammurabi. Thanks, Dr. Josh and or his wife, whoever's over there, sending $4.99 from Digital Hammurabi. Congratulations on your subs, Haden. Listening in while I work. Here's to continual respectful conversations between skeptic and believers. Yeah. Thank you very much, sir or ma'am. I'm sorry, I don't know who's commenting, but if it's Dr. Josh, he was a lovely guest to have on. We had a great conversation. And shout out to Nick Quint. I see you in there. What's going on, Nick? He says he really enjoyed your conversation on 1 Corinthians. I don't have it pulled up anymore, but 1 Corinthians 14 or something. I'm not sure. He may have been talking about me. I did that. I don't know if you did or not. But anyway,
not me.
Okay, he may have been talking to me. I thought he was talking about you. But I was surprised that your choice and your favorite interview was not Dr. William Lane Craig, also, as you predicted. How did your relationship with William Lane Craig begin? Because I've got to say, he is one of, I'm going to throw him under the bus. He is one of the few that I have been unable to get on. And so I never expect that these people who are well known and write books and all this sort of stuff, that they're going to want to come on my channel or anything. I don't ever approach it with any expectations. But yeah, I was in contact with the offices of William Lane Craig, and I don't think we were able to get him to come on. But anyway, so how did you become kind of friends or acquaintances with Dr. William Lane Craig?
That's a good question. So the first time that I met him in person was we had a Facebook group. This was before Capturing Christianity. I think it was actually just like maybe 6 months, maybe just a couple months before I started Capturing Christianity. So I started Capturing Christianity in October of 2016. So it's now May of 2020. But I mean, that doesn't necessarily matter to the story that I'm telling. But so we met with Dr. Craig and Jan, and the whole, like, we went to his Defenders class. There was a Facebook group. we organized this meeting or this like little get together, I guess. And we basically just hung out with Dr. Craig, and they like threw this whole thing for us. Like that afternoon, I think Jan stayed up and like made sandwiches for all of us. It was incredible. And there was really just a handful of us. John McCrae was one of the guys that was there, Adam Coleman, and Wade Tistammer. Wade is another guy that I've had on my channel. He's also goes by Maverick Christian. He's super, super intelligent. But so it was just a handful of us, and we went there and we like watched his Defenders class. That was amazing. And then after that, we had lunch with him, and we were able to, then he got up and got a microphone, and we just could ask him any question that we wanted. And we did that for a little while. So that was my first in-person meeting with him. Later on, I attended a conference and he was there, and I went and said hello. And then I should mention this too. So the first time that I met him at the Defenders class, I asked to take his picture because I'm a photographer. And so I took a picture of him on this little camera that I brought, and I really liked it. And so I posted it, and then I think I tagged him, and then I also sent it to him, and I said, hey, look, you can use this for whatever you'd like. And so his media team loved it, and they started to use it for stuff.
Nice.
And so that was one of the ways that I kind of got in, was to offer some free photography services. And now Jan loves me. She loves the photography. So she's like, anytime I see them or in person, she's like always asking me photography camera questions, because she's now the photographer in the family.
Oh,
she's
nice.
like always bringing around a camera and like is trying to take pictures of him and stuff. Cause she's basically almost at every event that he ever does. I think, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, that's basically how I've kind of gotten in, was
cool
photography, and then just kind of meeting him in person.
So here's a question that comes to mind, just kind of offhand, but because you're mentioning Jan, and I've listened to Dr. Craig talk about his wife and how supportive she is, and he gives her a lot of credit, and I think it's really cool. Is your wife at all interested? I'm married as well. Is your wife at all interested in Christian apologetics?
I would say no, for the most part. She does have some little interest, but it's nowhere near where I'm at. What's interesting is that I actually did an interview with her on my channel, and I think it was about maybe 6 to 8 months ago, maybe a little bit longer. And so we talked about that. We talked about people were asking her questions so that they could meet Miss Capturing Christianity.
Yeah, you did, and I actually watched it, but I was going to ask you here in front of my audience anyway. But yeah, I just wonder because my wife just she has no interest in it whatsoever, and it's not because she couldn't follow it if she didn't want to. She's incredibly smart. She's way smarter than I am. But yeah, she doesn't get annoyed because she supports things that I do. But sometimes I'll get to talking, and she'll be like, "Look, you guys shut it off, and we gotta talk like about the weather, or about this stupid TV show or something, because I'm tired." So I was just wondering if anybody else has a similar experience or not.
No, that's kind of my experience. Yeah, we rarely talk about apologetics. Sometimes she'll ask me a question, sometimes I'll ask her a question, something I'm thinking about, but it usually has to be like the right situation for that. Yeah, where it's not like.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If she brings it up, then it's fair game to talk about. But if I just start rambling, she's probably going to get annoyed eventually. But I can understand that. But people get annoyed, so I'm pretty used to it. But what role, and we talked about this question beforehand, so if it's kind of confusing and you want to reword it, that's perfectly fine. But what role do you see apologetics playing? Yeah,
so we talked about this a little bit, and the interpretation that I came away with was sort of what does it play? What's the benefit of it?
Yeah, kind of.
How can it be used? What's the purpose of it? Yeah. So I think that there are three main things, and this is in line with William Lane Craig and what he says about the value of apologetics. So one of the things I think it really does well is it makes Christianity intellectually viable as sort of an intellectual option for people. So I think that that's super important in our culture. And so that's more of like a cultural purpose that it has. And then another one is preventing apostasy. So instead of people falling away from the faith, it can shore them back up with arguments, with reasons to think that Christianity is true. So, and obviously I think that that wouldn't be necessarily a good thing if I didn't think that Christianity was true, but because I do think it is true, I think that's a good thing that it has going for it. And then evangelism is another one, which that's a lot different than the other two, but I think that it's the least. I think evangelism is kind of like a side. It's not like the main purpose of apologetics, and maybe I'm unique in that, but when I do my thing, I'm not thinking like, oh, I'm trying to evangelize all of these atheists to become Christians. Right. Because I honestly, between you and me, and I know this is not just between you and me, but
it certainly isn't.
I think that a lot of atheists are sort of closed off to the truth of Christianity. And so for people like that, the best thing to do is not to argue with them or provide them with all of these arguments for the truth of Christianity. I think for people like that who are just genuinely closed, I think the best thing to do is to just pray for them. But for people who are open, those are the people who it's going to be, apologetics can be a sort of source of evangelism and possibly persuading them to embrace the truth of Christianity. But I think people like that are I think it's a small number of total people who are open to argumentation, convincing them that something is true. I think a lot of people, perhaps even the majority, and that I think most people are just persuaded they go toward views that they find comforting and emotionally satisfactory. Yeah. So I think that's for most people, apologetics isn't really going to persuade them, but I think for the people that it does, that's important. But that's not to say that apologetics has no purpose, because I think that's actually the sort of secondary purpose that it has. I think the main one, like I said, is that it makes Christianity intellectually viable, and then it also prevents a lot of Christians from apostatizing. I think that is super important.
Yeah. No, I think your assessment is pretty much accurate. And if anybody listening thinks that Cameron's being, dishonest or not fair enough or whatever to skeptics, let me just say that, like, I want Christianity to be true, right? So, like, I would have to have, and it's just the way that we make decisions. And I'm not saying this is necessarily rational. I'm just saying this is how people make decisions. They have to see the good in it before they're going to accept it. And I see good in Christianity. I want it to be true. So if it is intellectually viable, now if it's not, even if I wanted it to be true and everyone just have to take my word for it, I would give it up. But I do see it as intellectually viable, like you're talking about. And actually more than that, I think, depends on whatever, but I think it is true. But I also want it to be true, and I have no problem saying that. I think there's probably a lot of skeptics. I mean, I don't have any statistics, but I think there's probably a lot of skeptics and non-Christians just in general who don't want it to be true for whatever reason. And they also don't find it intellectually viable. It doesn't have to be a both and. And so I'm really just crowd pleasing here. But anyway, this is a question that comes up. Do you ever fear that exposing people, because in the process of apologetics, you have to bring up objections and address them. Whereas the Christian, in this case, that you're bringing this objection up to, may have never heard it before. And now they're going to doubt, and now there's a possibility that they might, like you say, apostatize. So is it a fear of yours that might happen?
It's definitely a possibility that something like that could happen. But I think what sort of grounds me is going back to just relying on the Holy Spirit to do his thing and to know what he's doing. So I think apologetics works for a lot of people. Like, that's not, I won't say most people, but I think it does work for some people. So that is an avenue that the Holy Spirit can use to bring someone into a relationship. But for others, I think that that's just part of what it means to have free will, is that you are able to go down the path that you want to go down. And if you want to ultimately reject God, then that's what you can do. And so it doesn't bother me a whole lot thinking that apologetics can lead to these bad circumstances. On the other hand, it can lead to some really good things. So it's not clear to me that would necessarily outweigh the positives. But at the same time, I think that it's ultimately what God has done is given us the freedom to choose and to go the path that we want to go down. So ultimately, we basically, what I'm saying is that we have to keep in mind that autonomy is a real thing, and that someone, if they want to go down that path, if they find this objection and they find it convincing or compelling or whatever, which I think in most cases there's probably something deeper going on. It's not always just about intellectual stuff, no matter who you are, including me, including you, including everybody watching. It's not just intellectual reasons. So you can couch it in that. You can say, oh, yeah, I fell away from the faith because of this intellectual reason, when in reality, it's probably something like sin or something else that's going on in your life.
In reality, you just wanted to move in with your girlfriend. But no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right.
That's a meme.
No, I mean, it's no, I think that's actually, I think that people are driven by emotional factors to a degree that they probably wouldn't want to acknowledge.
Yeah, no,
and again.
Yeah. No, I mean,
yeah,
so
it applies to me too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is you can flip this coin over. If I were to apostatize and give up my faith, I mean, there would be huge repercussions of that. My wife, or just starting a family, things like that. It wouldn't be income related, but it would be relationship related. I find a lot of satisfaction in church family and things like that. So yeah, those things definitely play a role, and I don't deny them at all. So what?
Yeah, I just think that autonomy is important. I just think that autonomy is important, and the value of that is really important. So you've got to give people the autonomy to make their own decisions, to ingest, that's maybe a gross term to use, but ingest the type of information that they want to ingest and do what they come away doing with it. I mean, that's just what it means to recognize that someone is an adult and that they can make their own choices. Yeah. So I don't see a big problem with that.
No, me either. It's just a question that always gets asked, and my answer is usually I don't want people to pretend to believe anyway. Because if you're faced with an objection, you really do think it's a defeater, but you go on believing, which is impossible. But in other words, you're just pretending. And so that's back to that faith without works type of thing, that nominal Christianity. Christianity is exclusive to some degree. So, I mean, we don't want people pretending that they believe when they don't. I think for one thing, that's not going to be like healthy for you. If you don't believe, just don't believe. And so I am thankful that we live in a place where you can not believe. And, like I said, if I were to not believe, all of a sudden there would have repercussions with my family and stuff like that. But I'm perfectly free to do so, as far as from a legal standpoint, things like that is what I'm getting at. And I don't want people to pretend to believe. So, in other words, bringing up objections doesn't, I'm not afraid of that either for that reason. But that comes back to that autonomy you're talking about. What advice would you give someone who is interested in apologetics or new to apologetics? Maybe they have a similar story of you and me, but they're on the back, like at the beginning where we were, like, wow, this has either kept me from going away or whatever, and now I want to share it with other people.
What advice would I give that person?
Yeah, kind of just starting out.
Okay. I would say to continue reading. And are you saying that, like, what advice would I give them if they want to start a ministry?
Yeah, or not even necessarily like a formal ministry, but they're definitely interested in studying apologetics and sharing it with others because they see it as a tool for evangelism or as a tool for discipleship or whatever it may be. But we can go with ministry if that's easier.
Well, what I'm thinking is that it would be very good to decide early on whether or not you wanted to really, really take this seriously. So, and also decide, like, think about what type of ministry could this lead to and what would you want to do with it. So for me, it sort of worked out perfectly that I'm a layman. I don't have a degree in apologetics or philosophy or history or anything like that. I have a degree in audio production. And I decided early on that I was going to just stick with that, just be like a lay person interviewing the actual professionals and getting their views and having them discuss. And that was going to be my role in all of this, is to provide a platform for people, basically, for the smart people. And I think that's what you've got to decide for yourself. What are you going to be? Are you going to be one of these professionals who studies an argument really in depth, gets a master's and a PhD, and starts writing and publishing papers and writes books and everything? Is that your role, or is your role going to be someone who popularizes the arguments? And I think that when you decide that, it can really start to shape what your future is going to look like, whether or not you want to find a school to enroll in, or if you want to just read more on your own, stay an autodidact like I am and eventually start your own ministry, or maybe not even that's your role. Maybe your role is actually to join an existing ministry and support them in some other way. I think Lydia McGrew, she wrote an article on this topic, and I think she's right in that most people who are interested in apologetics are not called to be like the front man of a ministry. Most people are called to support ministries and sort of be the feet in the background and making sure that these ministries can happen. So, and I think that's important. Most people are not going to be doing this full time, getting a salary from it, doing it, their full-time work will probably be through some other means, and then they'll do this as a kind of hobby or on the side. But I'm kind of rambling at this point, but those are just some thoughts that I have.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. You just got to know yourself, and then, be creative. So, like, I know myself. I'm not going to be the William Lane Craig debater. I don't know enough. I am a nerd like that, and I study this stuff all that time. But I also just don't think I could. I respect debating kind of the way he does. Whenever I hear him talk about it, I think I've heard him talk about his how he prepares for a debate, and I think he's exactly correct that you really need to approach it that way, because you could go out there and make a fool of yourself. And I'm way too fearful of that. I think I would do just a horrible job. You've done some debates, and I thought you did a good job. But yeah, I don't think it's really for me. I really just like studying it, throwing this information, vomiting the information back out on YouTube whenever I'm finished reading a book or something like that. And then also doing the interview thing as well. But yeah, the supporting roles, and then back to the local church. That really is probably going to be the most important thing. So if you could somehow start a Sunday school class, or just a study group that meets in your home or whatever, and you can make it like a book club. You take a Christian apologetics book, get some people to come study it. I think that might be the most important thing. Mama Bear Apologetics is like the coolest thing in the world. I've had, I can't think of her name right now, crap, but I've had her on the show before, and I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world, because she's basically just saying moms, and that's how you change the world, is through moms, through parents, the local church, stuff like that. It's not these the big debaters and stuff, but obviously those are important as well, and that might be you. And I do want to add, if you're going to go into the academia side of this, I would strongly recommend, and I say this because a professor recommended it to me when I was doing my master's degree, if you're going to go do a PhD and you're really interested in some apologetic topic, some topic that applies to apologetics, narrow it down to something in the field of the philosophy of religion, or something in the field of New Testament studies. You can get a PhD in apologetics. I don't think that's a bad thing or anything like that, but I think you'll find it more fruitful to go the other route. But anyway, that was the advice that was given to me by a professor when I was in seminary, and so I try to always pass that on, because I thought it was really good advice. So that was advice for just kind of getting into apologetics. Now let's move to the dreaded world of YouTube. So what advice would you give to someone, and this, you could probably write a book on this. You should write a book on this. It would be cool. What advice would you give to someone just starting a YouTube channel?
You should have said, I'll just do a video on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no need for books when you can make a video that'll get thousands of views. You're not going to get, yeah.
Okay, so starting a YouTube channel. So what's funny is that years ago when I first started capturing Christianity, I think I put a couple interviews up or a couple videos up, and Mike Winger reached out to me on Facebook, and I was like, who is this guy? Who's this Mike Winger dude? And he's like, hey, look, I'll help you with YouTube. I really like what you're doing. I'll help you like figure out how to do YouTube, because he, at this point, I think he'd been doing YouTube for several years, and he had started to grow in popularity. I think at that point he was maybe at 40 or 50,000 subscribers. So he knew what he was doing. And I was like, no, I'm not a YouTuber. I don't really care about that at all. No, I'm just trying to do like my blog and do some other things here and there. And whoever's interested in my work is going to be interested in it. And so that's just a funny story. But so I never thought of myself as being like a YouTuber or someone who does YouTube sort of professionally. But here's what I can suggest, that if you're wanting to get into YouTube, what you can do. And the first thing would be to pick a very defined target market. So who is your audience, basically? So with my audience, you may or may not have noticed this, but my audience is very targeted. It is targeted at people who have an interest in apologetics but are not beginners. So I don't appeal to a beginner who is just getting started in apologetics and philosophy of religion. Like if you watch any of my videos or debates, like think about the debate that I just hosted between Dr. Craig and Graham Oppie.
Yeah.
Like you're a person who just started in apologetics or in philosophy is not going to get a whole lot out of a debate like that. So my target market, my target audience are people who are sort of intermediate to advanced in the world of apologetics, which is already a very small world.
Right.
What's interesting is that you can see that on YouTube, there is an audience for everything. Like it doesn't matter what you do, there is an audience for it. And it's really weird. Like atheism, I think only makes up a percentage of total people in the entire world. Yet these atheist YouTubers like Cosmic Skeptic, he's at like 330,000 subscribers.
Yeah. It's
insane. There's an audience for everybody. It doesn't matter what it is. But the reason why it's important to pick a target like this is because YouTube is not going to know who to pitch your videos to otherwise. Like if they're just pitching your videos to, and they do this, they will put your video out there, and if people are clicking on it, they'll show it more. And if they're not clicking on it, they won't. But if they don't know who to show your video to, based on these other users who are clicking on videos themselves, and they kind of generate like a profile of every person. So if they don't know who to show your video to, because you don't have a defined target market, then you're going to end up reaching nobody. So if your target is too broad, it's too general, you're not going to reach anybody. And it's sort of counterintuitive because you think that going for a small target means that you're not going to get an audience, but really that's the only way to get an audience on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then the second thing that I would say is to just be unique. So if you intend on starting a YouTube channel, doesn't matter in what area, it could be in apologetics or it could be like making cups. My wife just recently started making tumblers, like custom tumblers. She's not going to get in the YouTube game of that at all, which there is a YouTube market for that, believe it or not. Now, like I said, there's for everything, there's a YouTube market. But just be unique. So when you're thinking about whatever it is you're trying to do on YouTube, look at other channels, see what they're doing, and then do your own thing. So don't just like copycat some other YouTuber. You've got to find what makes your channel unique, stand out, and make someone want to subscribe to it, as opposed to the 10 other YouTube channels that are basically already doing the same thing. So you've got to figure out what kind of angle are you coming from that's going to make your content stand out and be unique and something that people really want to engage with.
Yeah.
So those two main things is what I would say.
Yeah, definitely. So this one kind of goes along with it. I don't know. You may have the same exact answer. So I'm wondering if I should ask. But probably the most common question I get, it has absolutely nothing to do with God, Jesus, the Bible, apologetics, or anything. But it is, how do you grow a YouTube channel? And I don't have any idea. I've only had moderate success. Any success that I'm having is probably just about to start. But how do you grow a YouTube channel? That's a question I always get.
So the number one thing that helped me is to collaborate. So I did a collaboration with What Do You Meme and Mike Winger, and this happened I think a couple of years ago. My daughter's back. What's up, baby?
Remember you said we could have Oreos?
I want Oreos.
We can have Oreos later. We can have Oreos later. I'm almost done. I have no idea how long we're going, but
yeah,
anyway, she's cute and I love her, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's all good. She's just hanging out. So the number one thing that got me started was I did a collaboration with Mike Winger and What Do You Meme? We did it was like a 20 video series in a playlist where we each took one argument that the Friendly Atheist made on a YouTube video, and we each took turns responding to it, and we released it as a playlist. And as a result of that, I think at the time I was at like 1,500 subscribers, and by the end of it, I was at about 4,000 subscribers, because they both, I think John at What Do You Meme, I think his audience was about 26,000 at the time, and Mike's was about 40,000 at the time, I think. Something around there. And so their audience became aware of my work through this collaboration that we did, and then things really started to progress from there. So I continued to create the same types of videos that I did for that series. And then I started doing more stuff. And it's sort of just grown organically into doing the videos that I do now. And I've sort of found what works and what people are interested in, ways to do the live shows that make them interesting and keep people interested in watching all the way to the very end. So it's something that you kind of got to learn. But collaborating is a great way to grow. And then another thing that definitely needs to get mentioned is memes. Post memes. I grew the first thing that I did when I was growing my ministry was I grew on Facebook first. And so I think I hit within a few months of starting my Facebook page, I was like growing by thousands of Facebook likes. And primarily that was through memes, sharing funny memes, and people love memes on Facebook. And now I'm also sharing memes on the YouTube channel in the community section. And those always get a whole lot of comments, whole lot of likes. So memes are like just an easy way to grow an audience. I mean, if you didn't already know that. And so now I'm like doing it on Instagram as well. And they always do very well. It's a weird phenomenon.
Yeah,
memes are weird.
You and Michael Jones are definitely the meme kings, and it seems to be working for you. I'm probably going to stay out of the meme game. But I think the collaboration thing is definitely true. One of the first people I had on was J. Warner Wallace. And I was just like, wow, holy crap, he said yes to my email. This is going to be cool. And, just having names on like that really helped grow. Of course, it's an interview style YouTube channel. So that kind of helps a lot. Maybe that's why. Here's one thing that's important is it's cool to like invite popular people onto your YouTube channel. I mean, that's what we're doing today, I guess. Yep. But it's also, it's better in terms of like marketing if you can appear on their channel. So like I've had a few appearances on Mike Winger's channel, and after each one of those, I think my subscriber counts went up significantly as well. So like, and significant is relative because it, like if your YouTube channel is 200 subscribers, a jump of 200 subscribers is, 100% double, growth. But so it depends, but every time that I've gone on someone else's popular channel, it's grown a lot. So it's good to invite people on, but it's also good to try to collaborate and try to get on their channel. And it's difficult to be like, hey, have me on your channel. Yeah, I was going to say, this is an argument for me to ask you to come on, but you actually already did try to schedule that. But
yes, we tried to make that happen, but I'm just super busy. But I do want to have I want to have you on mine. We've got to figure out something that we can do, some kind of joint thing.
Yeah,
so
that'd be dope
for sure.
Dope. Yeah, so dope. The collaboration thing is definitely a big one. But the thing is, and I'm just going to put this out there for people who are thinking about starting a YouTube channel. Two things. First of all, you'll notice that Cameron did not mention anything about what do they call it, SEO, or like trying to use little tricks to get noticed through the algorithm or whatever, because that crap doesn't work. If someone says it does work, it doesn't work. It's the best thing is going to be organic growth that happens over time. So consistency is a huge thing, and it's one of the things that I struggle with. I really try to do something once a week. It's kind of hard for me to do because I'm really not actually interested in devoting full time to this. I really like my job, and I don't think I'd ever quit it. But consistency is a big one. And
you're a perfect example of what I was talking about earlier. Someone who has a full-time job, and then just does apologetics as a hobby, is like in their free time. I think most people are called to do what you're doing.
Yeah. So even if I did come to a place where I was making a full-time income through this, you got to define full-time income also. But anyway, I still don't think I'd job just because I like it so much. But I'm getting a call.
So I need to push back. I need to push back. Oh, you are?
No. So I'm first responder. So this is through the volunteer department. I don't have to respond. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I need to push back on something you said about like keywords and SEO and stuff. So that stuff is super important actually when it comes to YouTube and getting YouTube. So basically YouTube is looking for a couple different, and I don't want to get too technical, but there's a couple things that YouTube is looking for, and having good keywords, having good titles, having a good thumbnail. The combination of the thumbnail and the title is super important.
Yes. For
whether or not YouTube is going to send your video out to people. So I would definitely say to look into that. And the good thing is that on YouTube, there are YouTubers who are trying to help YouTubers get good at YouTube. And those YouTubers usually have like
it's true.
hundreds of thousands of subscribers. So if you're interested, you don't have to like just listen to me on it. You can search for it on YouTube.
Yeah.
From other YouTubers who are trying to help YouTubers.
Yeah.
And they do an amazing job, and they have really interesting things that they say in all of their videos. So if you're interested, I would recommend that too.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the three biggest things as far as that kind of stuff go is the title, the thumbnail, and I don't know, I guess the keywords, but the keywords are kind of less important. The title and the thumbnail are going to be the biggest ones.
Keywords, from my understanding, like you're talking about the keywords that you put down in like the description of the video. So I don't know how much the tags. Yeah. I don't know how important those are these days. Actually, I think what's most important is the title and the thumbnail.
Yep.
And the combination and whether or not people are clicking on it.
Yeah. And so what I was about to say was that you can, so if I had the title, J. Warner Wallace, something, and J. Warner Wallace doesn't appear in the video, you know what I mean? I'm just saying, like, those sort of tricks and stuff like that is just make it organic, be authentic, do your thing. There's no real tricks as far as getting famous really quick or whatever. I guess there might be, I don't know, but okay. So let's do one more question. We're about 50 more. We're at about 50 minutes, not 50 more minutes. We're at 50 minutes here. So let's do one more question, and then I'm gonna go scroll through the Q&A and see if we can come up with something good from there. So again, if you have a question, tag at Help Me Believe. And the super chats do work. So if you want to do the super chat, I guess I'll address those first. Let's see. What is the future of capturing Christianity going to look like?
That is a question. I think, so I've been doing a lot of thinking about I'm always thinking about ways of upping the content to the next level. How can I make more engaging content for people? And what I've thought about is I've reflected on the types of interviews that I've done and the debates that I've hosted and the content that I've produced. I think the most engaging for me personally, and then also I think for the audience, these have all done really well, are the in-person interviews that I've done with, say, Gary Habermas. I released one recently with David Wood, with Frank Turek, a bunch of other guys. And the in-person interviews are a lot different because I guess just on a personal level, it's really, it makes for a much better conversation to be sitting across from somebody instead of sitting across from like a computer screen or a camera. So what my plan, the thinking about for the future of capturing Christianity, what I would love to have happen is to have a studio where I live and have a way of flying, and obviously this would have to be when the pandemic is over, but flying people in to the studio and doing a live in-person interview out of a studio at least once a week. And then beyond interviews, we could do Christianity. Could be Joe Rogan style, but it would look nice instead of like with fluorescent lighting up against a brick wall and curtains.
You're probably not going to smoke.
So it would look really cool. Probably not going to do that, but yeah, I mean, something along those lines. I mean, it's yeah. Well, anyways, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Cool.
There's some in-person interviews, but doing it live, so not like just recorded and then posted way after the fact. So, but that would require a whole lot more of everything.
Yeah, it will. And that's a piece of advice I have to people that want it. Let's say you're interested in doing some kind of interview style stuff like Cameron and I. You probably can't afford to fly people out like that. Cameron's well advanced in his ministry here, but you can get Skype and Skype Recorder, and you got, that makes you able. That's how I'm able to have Cameron on. I can't fly him out here, and so it's not a bad alternative. But yeah, obviously in person is way cooler. But let's see. Nick Quint asks, can you ask Cameron to remove his hat and whip it? I'm not sure what the whip it part means, but...
and whip it? Maybe he's talking about my hair?
Yeah, he wants you to whip the hair, I guess.
Am I going to get a portion, some of the proceeds of these super chats?
You may or may not. I can't affirm or deny.
Yeah, did we talk about this on air? The quarantine hair thing that I did?
I watched the video. I don't think we talked about it here, but yeah.
Well, there's going to be no whipping today, but there it is. I'm scheduled for a haircut on Friday, so I'm really looking forward to that because I have a lot of videos that I want to record. I've completely written the scripts out for. I'm just waiting to get a haircut before I record them. And then the main one is I'm doing a debate with Rationality Rules, who's a very popular YouTube atheist. I think he's at about 230,000 subscribers right now. And so he and I are going to be doing a debate, and it's going to be like an opening statement, which is basically just one video from me, 20 minutes long, around 20 minutes. I'll post that. He'll have a month to respond, do his opening. And then when I see his opening, I'll respond to that. And it'll just be a back and forth sort of debate.
Sounds cool.
Ish thing that we do on YouTube. So once we do that, or once I get a haircut, I'll be able to record. So I'm really looking forward to that. But thank you, Nick. Yeah. Thank you for.
So I've been getting haircuts this whole time, but so nobody shamed me for that. But anyway, or my barber. Yeah, she's probably not supposed to be doing that. But let's see. Pine Creek, Wichita asks, question, my perception is that many churches don't do much apologetics training, either on Sunday or other times. Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of them just aren't aware that it exists. And I'm just kind of guessing at this point, because I don't know what is going on in every single church or what's going on even in most of them. I've only personally attended a handful. So, but my guess would be that they aren't aware that it's a thing, that apologetics is a thing. They don't really have a care for it or see the value in it. And so that's why it's important that we have people like us who do have an interest to go talk to your pastor and say, hey, look, can I do a Sunday school class? Are you interested in having something like this? So that's a way that we can start to grow some interest in apologetics, is if feet on the ground, people actually go out and talk to people about it. So, but as far as, I think that they probably just don't either know about it or they don't see the value in it. So they may know about it and they just might not see the value in starting something like that, because maybe they're a church in the Bible Belt and there's like no one in their community that's doubting or anything like that. So maybe they just don't see the value in it. So those I think are two of the biggest things.
Yeah. Let's see. Here's a good question from, I'll ask you this one from Crash Course Apologetics. He also says hello to Cameron. He says, or she, I'm not sure. Are you?
His name is Jordan.
Okay, so you know him. Cool. So
he's actually, I should say this. He's another apologist that I'm trying to help grow and stuff. So he just passed 1,000 subscribers like you. So it's a really exciting time for him as well.
Yeah, congrats to Jordan.
Really cool.
Everybody go subscribe to Crash Course Apologetics. Let's see. Are you going to teach, do you teach your children, or are you going to teach your children apologetics?
Yes, I plan on doing that. I've tried to have like a couple conversations with my daughter. I mean, I don't know if you actually saw her when she came in, but
she's cute.
Yeah. So thanks. I'm trying to have conversations every now and then. I do have Dr. Craig's books on like what is God like, that whole series. So I've tried to go through some of those. Those are a little bit more difficult because there's some actually deep topics, and obviously he does it in a really good way, but it's still like at 4 years old, it might be a little bit too advanced. So I'm just waiting for a good moment, or when I can notice that she's able to have a conversation like that at a deeper level. I'm very, very eager to start to have those conversations. So yes, the plan is for sure to teach them apologetics.
Sure. Cool.
For sure.
Let's see. A few more. Oh, here's an interesting question from Harley Wykes. Does the resurrection provide any support for the historicity of the rest of Scripture?
That is a good question. Yes. So I think it does. So here's the reason why. So Jesus was a Jew, and Jews believe that the Old Testament was infallible, the Word of God, and inspired and everything. So if Jesus was who he said he was, and he believed that, that's very good reason to think that the Old Testament is inspired. So then the question would be, well, what about the inspiration of the New Testament, which would then just sort of open up a conversation about the canon and how that was formed and how we can have confidence in the New Testament canon. The Old Testament canon is a lot easier to establish based on the fact of Jesus. But then the question would be like, so Jesus sort of started the church. He was the initiator of the Christian church. And so it opens up a lot of interesting questions. But I think that there is an argument that can be made from the resurrection of Jesus to the inspiration of, for sure, the Old Testament. And then the New Testament would just get a little bit more complex in how that would work out. But I think Jesus can be the ground of that for sure.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's get a few more questions in here. Is Pine Creek, Wichita, is this like somebody, it's not actually Doug.
The only Pine Creek I'm aware of is Doug.
Yeah, so that's not him because he's in here too. First of all, I want to say to Dr. Josh from Hammurabi, saying or implying that underlying motivations led to or influenced leaving the faith is counterproductive in my opinion. Well, I just would say that I don't think Cameron or I meant anything by it. Hopefully, the fact that I said that I have underlying or motivations that maybe keep me in the faith and things like that would show that we don't mean anything.
So what is he saying?
Saying or implying that underlying motivations led to or influenced leaving the faith is counterproductive in my opinion.
Okay.
But let's see.
I mean, I think it's okay. I can comment, but it's up to you.
That doesn't matter to me. He kind of put a smiley at the end of it, so I don't think he's really offended by it. But I feel like we prefaced it enough whenever we were discussing that we didn't mean anything derogatory by it. We were really just making a statement.
Yeah,
about
no, there was
beings,
no. Right, exactly. Yeah, it wasn't derogatory.
Yeah.
It was just to say that we all have emotions and factors that it's not just about intellectual reasons when you make a decision. I think we try to convince ourselves of that, but that's probably due to like insecurities.
Yeah, I made a joke about moving in with your girlfriend, so if that offended anybody, I guess I apologize. But what are some? This is from Nick Quint. What are some future potential objections to the Christian faith? What do you see when you look in the future like that? What do you think? So maybe some new objections are going to come in the future. Do you ever predict anything like that?
I have no idea how to respond to that. I don't know.
Maybe AI or stuff like that. I don't know. But yeah, it'd be hard to.
Perhaps I kind of feel like Dr. Craig when I'm saying it like that. But maybe what could be an objection down the road if we discover alien life on some planet or something. I don't know if that's more than likely. It would be a really bad objection that we'd have to answer.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it'd be hard.
I don't know. I don't know what. Yeah.
See, here's the real Pine Creek. I don't know who the other one is. Here's the real one. The problem with collaboration is you just end up preaching to the choir. But that's not true, Doug, because you and I collabed, and I got a lot of growth from your followers. So, but anyway, I don't even know what the comment.
His problem is that okay, maybe he meant something different than what he said.
Maybe so.
Because that just
I didn't really
strikes me as
understand it.
obviously
So
false.
if I got that wrong, Doug, I'm sorry.
So one of the questions that you had in that you sent me earlier was, how do you decide who to engage with and who to not engage with? I thought that was an interesting.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I'll keep scrolling.
It should probably be it should probably be addressed. I haven't really ever talked about this, so it'd be fun about it for a second. Well, basically, I have two main criteria for people who I engage with online and people that I invite on my channel to talk and do debates and interview. So the first criteria is that they take philosophy seriously. I think that that's a really important criteria, and I don't think that it applies to everybody. Some people. So for someone, here's an example of someone that I think does take it seriously and who I really like to engage with is on the other side of things is Cosmic Skeptic, Alex O'Connor. I think that he and I disagree about a lot of stuff when it comes to religion, primarily, but I think that he does care about philosophy, and so conversations with him can be productive because we have the same sort of values. We value some of the same things: critical thinking, logic, rigor, consistency, actual honesty. These are some of the same values that we have together. So that's really important. I look for that in someone else. The other thing is that the second main criteria that I look for is someone who basically acts like an adult. So it's not always a debate, or doesn't have to get nasty or combative. People like that I typically avoid because I'm not that kind of person. And so when I try to match myself up with another person, what I'm looking for is, can they have just conversation without getting heated, without getting angry? Can they just have a rational conversation, an intelligent conversation? They care about philosophy, and can we do this in a way that is productive, that is cordial, and is not going to be
Yeah.
Anyways, those are the main two things that I look for.
Yeah, definitely. That's good. Nick says his life is complete now. I guess that's when you took your hat off. So there you go.
Oh my goodness.
Here is actually a good question from Doug from Pine Creek. He says, what is Cameron's view of hell? Is it a place, eternal conscious torment, neither? So what's kind of your view of the doctrine of hell?
So as far as where it is and what it is, I think that I lean toward a view of annihilationism, and annihilationism is something that's taught by a couple different denominations within Christianity. But what it basically says is that hell is not this place of eternal conscious torment. My daughter's back.
Yay!
Hey, perfect timing.
Hungry.
You're hungry? Okay, we can have a snack in just a minute. Okay.
Hey.
We'll wrap it up.
All right. Yeah, no worries. I'll give you some Oreos. Hang on. So that's the view that I lean toward, and what it says is that hell is not a place of eternal conscious torment. You're not conscious. You're going to be sort of killed, and that's kind of what atheists already believe is something like annihilationism, where when you're dead, you're gone. So that's the view that I hold, and I lean toward the view. I don't say that I hold it, and I'm always careful to say that because I'm not completely convinced by it, but I think that it has something going for it. I'll also caveat that by saying this. I don't think that there are good philosophical objections to eternal conscious torment in terms of like ethics. So some atheists will say, well, how can God allow someone to be punished an infinite amount of time for a finite crime, something along those lines? I don't think that's a very good argument. And so I'm not convinced on those grounds to abandon eternal conscious torment and to hold annihilationism, something like that. I'm persuaded to hold annihilationism or to lean toward that view because of what the Bible actually teaches about it.
Yeah, I agree with
so,
that.
And that this is something that I haven't studied as deeply as I would like to in order to actually hold the position and publicly sort of defend it or say that this is my official stance. So I'm still tentative in that, but that's the view that I lean toward. So I don't lean toward the traditional eternal conscious torment view. I lean toward annihilationism. Yeah. And I know that fits in pretty neatly with a narrative, I'm sure, that he has about me. And so this is going to just be some more confirmation that he's right about my psychology.
Yeah, he has some further questions, which is great, Doug, but we don't have time to address all the questions. You'll have to have Cameron on. No, I'm just kidding. So Dr. Josh from Digital Hammurabi does say, no offense taken, love you both. And that was actually in a super chat. So thank you, Dr. Josh.
Cool.
We love you. So thanks so much. We love you too, Doug.
I love you, Josh.
I love Josh. I love Doug. And I love Pine Creek, Wichita, who is an employee of Doug. I think that's a joke. But anyway, that's all the time we have for questions. So Cameron's got to go give his daughter some Oreos. But thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much to the questioners and everybody, and to our Patreon supporters. If you want to watch the bonus segment, 5 more minutes with Cameron Bertuzzi, as well as all of our bonus segments, just follow the Patreon link in the description below and become a supporter. Thanks so much, guys. And we'll see you next time. Wait, I almost forgot. Cameron, is there anything you want to say?
Oh, yeah. By the way, Christianity is true.